Great, start off on mute. Hi, everybody. We're just going to give everybody a couple minutes here to join in. It looks like we've got about 67 attendees now, which is pretty great. So I think as everybody filters in, we're going to get things started. So I want to say hi, everybody. Welcome to our first ever Conservation Areas Workshop webinar. This is the first webinar in our three-part series. And on behalf of our workshop committee, we'd like to thank you for taking the time out of your day. You know, everybody's busy. So thanks very much for joining us. We appreciate it. I'm really excited to be doing this. Dave's really excited to be doing this. He's running the show in the background, so you won't see Dave, but know that he's here smiling behind a computer screen. He's our man behind the curtain, so to say. So mine will be the voice that you hear moderating this webinar. I'm Tori Fisher. I talk with my hands a lot, just so you know. I'm our Conservation Areas Administrator, and Dave Orr is Superintendent of Conservation Parks, and we are both from Credit Valley Conservation. So we've shared the responsibility this year of co-chairing this year's Conservation Areas Workshop on behalf of CBC, along with our wonderful planning committee who are in the audience right now, watching all their hard work come to fruition. Hi guys, thanks. So we do want to share a few housekeeping items with you during this webinar. So there is no public chat feature available within the webinar platform. And we do have closed captioning available if you require it, but please be aware that there is a slight delay between what we're saying and what you're reading. So it's also possible the audio translator did mishear us. So please don't hold us responsible for any word salad or any untoward translations. And our Q&A feature, we did want to mention throughout this webinar, our panel will be answering questions at the end of the webinar. So not at the end of each speaker's presentation. So please type your questions in the Q&A feature. I think you can see the icon here on the slide that'll show you where to access the Q&A feature. And we do ask that you address all your questions to either one specific speaker or to all speakers, as in, Pam, what did you have for breakfast this morning? Or all, how did you manage to get through this year without burying your head in the sand like an ostrich? Jury's out on that one, I think. So like really any unanswered questions that we don't get to today, we'll be following up with post webinar when we send out our survey. So you'll see answers to questions we didn't get to, but we're going to be kind of tackling the most popular ones as upvoted, which is a feature available within the Q&A. So I, unlike probably a lot of you, when the snow started to fly at the end of October this year, kind of felt like something was missing. We wish we were able to offer in-person webinar this year, but I mean, it's been such a positive mainstay in our yearly calendars, but we're working with what 2020 has to give us. So obviously it's been a challenging year, to say the least, but we knew we needed something, we needed to come together at least virtually to share and collaborate like we do so well. And this type of sharing is important. I think all CAs really leaned on each other this year to ensure consistent messaging, support, and maybe the odd vent about visitor non-compliance. I know we did. The workshop is important, so thank you for being here. And with that, we are super excited to have our guest presenters with us here today to walk you through how their conservation areas adjusted operations during this pandemic. And they came out swinging. So today with us, we have Craig Machan, Associate Director of Park Operations with Conservation Halton. We have Pam Walther-Mabee, Manager of Conservation Areas with Grand River Conservation Authority. We have Bill Lidster, Manager of Conservation Parks with Credit Valley Conservation. And we have Gorge Costie, Director of Conservation Area Services with Hamilton Conservation Authority. So again, I just want to remind everybody that each speaker will be presenting kind of one after another, and we will be opening up the floor to questions and answers at the end of the webinar, not after each presenter. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our first presenter, Craig Machan. So Craig, take it away.
Perfect. So I think I'm unmuted. I think everybody can hear me. You can see my presentation. I'm getting head nod. Perfect. I just wanted, before we get going, I just wanted to thank Dave, Tori, and the workshop team for pulling this together. As Tori said, it's been a mainstay, I think, in everybody's calendars for quite some time to head up to Aurelia and have our annual workshop. So it's great that the team was able to pull together these 3 webinars, and so thank you to each of you. And again, thanks to the participants. I know everybody's busy right now with COVID and everything related. So again, thanks for taking time out of your schedules to join the webinar today. So I'm going to get started on our presentation. So thanks. Sorry, I'm just trying to switch slides. Good. So just an agenda. So the committee has asked us to focus on these 4 main areas: enforcement, signage, managing visitation, health and safety. So we each of our presentations will kind of go through some components of these 4 items. So we at Conservation Halton, for those of you that don't know, we have 7 parks. We see about 1.2 million visitors on a normal year to our 7 parks. For the enforcement side of things, we're kind of unique, and we have a ranger staff. Our conservation areas rangers, and we have 3 staff members. So obviously, when COVID hit back in March, and we decided to close our parks on March 22nd, we had to close Glen Eden obviously a week early, and close the remainder of our parks. The biggest issue for our closure was that we weren't able to social distance, and I think that's probably a theme that you're going to hear from others talk about today too, is the distancing and some of the behaviors that were happening in the park. Pandemic was new to a lot of people back in March, so people didn't know how to behave, so we took the kind of a proactive approach and closed our park. So again, lucky that we have our 3 enforcement staff. They did a great job being patient with the visitors, helping educate people with the closures of the parks. They were fortunate that they have bylaw designation with the town of Milton, region of Halton, in the city of Burlington, so they could issue parking tickets, and they were also given powers under the Emergency Management and Civilian Protection Act that allowed them to delay charges up to $1,000. They didn't, but they had the ability to. So that team, we issued probably about 250 tickets, during our closures, and we still continue to issue tickets. One of the bonuses we have is because they're bylaw officers, and because I sit on our emergency management group with other other municipalities in the watershed, we were able to get our entrances to our parks and some of the Bruce Trail access points marked with emergency order signage, which increased our parking bylaw tickets up to $250 from the regular $440. So that was really good. That really helped get some compliance. And like I said here in my slide, the biggest challenge was keeping people out early on. We did that, and I'll show a slide later. Trying to keep people out of the parks, as much signage as we could put, as much vehicles and people we could put in front of the gates and at access points. People still didn't seem to know what a closed park meant. So it definitely kept our enforcement staff very, very busy. So one of the biggest successes that we had from an enforcement side was working with our partners. We had a good relationship with Halton Regional Police before this all started, but with Town of Milton bylaw, Burlington bylaw, Oakville bylaw, it's now much more of a collaborative effort when it comes to enforcing, and we do find that Town of Milton bylaw, Halton Regional Police would sooner do enforcement in a park than downtown Milton or downtown Burlington. So that was kind of a bonus for us. We could they liked to be out of the parks. So some of the signs of communications, we're very fortunate that our associate director of Marcoms, she was involved in this every step of the way. So we early on, this first slide shows once we reopened in May. I guess that was May 22nd. We reopened. We required reservations. So We did a lot of work with Google trying to get that information accurate, trying to educate everybody that reservations were required. But you can also see we took to social media, you know, the bottom left one, I think it is on my screen. You know, we did a lot of social media push to make sure that people knew that we were closed. And reviews were mixed, and I think a lot of you will probably remember when Mr. Ford made the announcement that conservation reserves were open. You know, that required a fair bit of education as well, both internally, because we have a lot of staff that aren't familiar with or fairly new to Conservation Authority, so didn't realize there was a difference. But then also externally, a lot of people assumed conservation reserves and conservation areas are the same thing. So that was a bit of a challenge there. But again, it was great to see you know, a lot of people coming to our defense in both the decision to close, but also educating people of correct behaviors once they are in our parks. Some of the signage that we put in place, you know, I'm not a big fan of putting signs absolutely everywhere, but obviously during the pandemic, the parks turned into a bit of a the signs everywhere sign type approach. So, you know, these are some of the examples that we had to put in place for COVID. The bottom right one that shows attention park closed, that one, it kind of relates back to the enforcement side. You can see there how we had a barricade. This is at Hilton Falls along Campbellville Side Road. We had a barricade there that indicated the park was closed until further notice. We purchased a construction fence across the access points to all our parks. So you can see that there. It also says park closed. And then on the gate in behind, you can see a gate there that is normally there. There's also park closed sign on there. And oddly enough, even with those 3 signs, the construction fence and everything, shocker, people didn't realize that we were actually closed. It didn't seem to matter what we did. People just either chose just to ignore or just to choose the rules that apply to them. But once we got open again, you know, we had some one-way trails. We encouraging people to remind them not to congregate. We also had to make sure we're protecting the animals as well. So Mountsburg, we've got you know, goats and donkeys and horses and all those types of things over there. So we had to make sure that people were kind of staying back from them, especially early on when when there wasn't a whole lot of information about COVID, you know, accurate information, I'd say, about COVID. You know, we had to make sure that the animals were protected too. So we have reopened our gift shops at Mountsburg and Crawford. So again, working with our health units to make sure that we're providing clear information to the people that are coming in there. Getting over to the managing visitation page, and this is something that, you know, I think I've talked to quite a few of you already about this, or representatives from your authority about this, but one of the things we're very proud of is our reservation system. So on May 22nd, we were able to reopen our parks with this reservation system. So it took us about 6 weeks. We worked with the people at Park Pass, and I know they've worked with Nottawasaga in the past, Lake Simcoe in the past. But when they came to us, you know, they had a system that essentially just gave access and very little else. So we worked with them, and in 6 weeks we were able to launch our Park Pass system with Park Pass, and requiring everybody to have 2-hour reservations. Both members and non-members had to make reservations. We had to set up capacities, and each park has a different capacity. In some ways, for some capacities, we just used parking lot size. In others, it was kind of the amenities that were there. So for example, at a place like Hilton Falls, there's 34 kilometers of hiking trail there, so tons of trail space, but there's only about 150 parking spots. So in that case, you know, although our trails could handle a large volume of people, our parking lots and the access points up to couldn't. Other areas like Rattlesnake Point, where we could, and Kelso, for example, we could get thousands of cars into those parks. But in Rattlesnake Point's case, there's only 7 kilometers of trail there. So we definitely lowered our capacity there in relation to what the parking capacity could be. So as part of it, we had their users fill the park pledge. So this was a good reminder just of general trail and conservation area etiquette, but also to remind them, you know, physical distancing and the requirements that COVID was putting on us as to our, I guess, our general behaviors when we're outside the house. So the good thing about the system too is it gave us the ability that we could remind people through email and text message if we had you know, an emergency situation, or if it was just a reminder due to COVID. We could remind them right even during their visit and post-visit through this system. So on the screen now you see an example of one of the emails. Again, once you make a reservation, you would get the email to remind you to don't come if you're sick. Just some of the general rules. What you see on the bottom right there is on the admin side of it, so we can tailor our messaging to get to those people and the messaging that we want. That top right one, it also allowed us to know where people were coming from. So you can see a heat map there, so we knew where in Ontario our visitors were coming from. It also allows us to knock off some postal codes. So if there's an area that's you know, maybe in lockdown, we can enter those postal codes into our system and not allow people from those areas to make reservations. So I know public health really liked that piece of it. So you can see in this map here, most of ours were in the Burlington, you know, Milton area. You can see some out, you know, Kitchener-Waterloo area, a lot from Toronto and east of there. So the system, you know, the issue we had with the system was just we've gone 60 years at Conservation Halton with not requiring a reservation, and then overnight we're requiring a reservation. So that was the biggest challenge, was getting people and reminding people of the kind of new processes. I would say that most people understood once they had the conversation. It was amazing how many people though that you talked to drove 6 hours to come for a 2-hour hike. And we kind of had to change a little bit of our customer service approach to what we would have done in previous years. But the system also, so it allowed us to relaunch some of our programs and services. So things like boat rentals, beach reservations, some of virtual programming, and Camp Kelso, which is normally our WOW camp. We were able to relaunch some of those, obviously with some procedural changes to keep people safe. You know, WOW camp, Camp Kelso, we typically see about 3,000 kids each summer for that program. This year we saw only about 750, but considering the situation, I think 750 was a good number. Through the pandemic, we saw about $130,000 of boat rentals done. We ran events like yoga, so we had 600 participants over, I think, about 6 weeks to our yoga program. $28,000 we did in challenge course. So it was, you know, financially it was a pretty good summer for us. We were able to also relaunch some of our virtual programming. So our manager of education, Brenna, she was able to develop some virtual program to get school kids, not necessarily back into the parks, but at least giving teachers a way to get some of the content that they normally would on site. We've also been able to relaunch some of our programs or some of our events. So we did our Mountsburg Experience, which was a bit of a replacement for our gala that we did a year before, and that was obviously at Mountsburg. Our Halloween Spooktacular, and we started sales last Monday for our new Christmastown event. We sold, you know, in the first minute that we went live for that, we had over 125 people sign up for it. And then on the Friday of last week, Halton Region went into code red, zone red. I don't know the reds, whatever we're called now, but we're in red. And we had now had to modify that program because that program was actually just supposed to start Friday this week. So, you know, I think that's a big lesson we've learned through this whole pandemic, is that we've had to adjust and readjust multiple times through this whole process. You know, being able to launch, you know, our Christmastown, we've generated about $185,000 worth of sales for that event this year. So we wanted to make sure that 1 week still could meet that demand, and obviously the revenue, it doesn't hurt, we'll take it. So we wanted to make sure that we could launch that. So again, it's just modifying our programs and events to meet the current situation or the time that we're at during the pandemic. Health and safety. So I think our health and safety specialist is probably, I don't know, writer's cramp probably isn't what happens anymore, but definitely typer's fingers or something from writing so many policies and procedures and making sure that our staff are safe during all of this. Our first priority was to get safety equipment into the hands of the ranger staff because they were front and center early on in the pandemic, and that was back to when some of the health and safety PPE was a little bit tough to come by. So that was our original priority. We've also, since then, though, we've been able to get plenty of health and safety stuff. We've purchased over 18,000 masks since the pandemic started, and 67,000 pairs of gloves since the pandemic started. And again, it's just policies for absolutely everything. And sometimes as soon as you write a policy, then all of a sudden things change and you got to go back and rewrite that policy again. But we worked closely with some of the people on this call, but also some of other ski resorts as well, to make sure that we're being consistent and learning from what others are already doing for their health and safety of their staff. We've also limited access space. We've really encouraged people to work from home through the entire pandemic. The authority's been very good at allowing people flexibility for their families and for being safe and working from home. At our admin building, we're down to about 10 people that were permitted in there at any given time right now, and we're encouraging. It'll probably be, I'm guessing, probably summer before we start to ramp back up there. In our parks admin building, we've set restrictions of only 4 people, so which is generally, for the most part, is pretty good. The authority was also great and provided $250 to all staff, all full-time staff, so that they could purchase stuff to make their home work environment a little bit better. And for those that were in the field that don't necessarily need earphones or anything because they're not sitting at a laptop all day, they could put those towards massages or new work boots or whatever. We didn't require receipts for those things. As our camps that I mentioned, I guess through our reservation system, we did our contact tracing was all done through there too. So again, another bonus of the system was that we knew exactly who everybody was, and if we did have an issue, then we knew where to go back to. Our camps, we developed some our limited spacing, but also made sure that we were in social bubbles. So in the past, it would have been just sign up for a time slot, we'd get you in. This year, it was come to us with your bubble, and then we'll offer a program to your bubble. So it was a little bit different of approach there too, and something that we've done a little bit before, but we call it the kiss and go, and I think others have that too, where the parents just drop off their kid, they don't even get out of their car. They drop the kids off, the kid goes. And we've also been able to get some private tours going as well. And again, that required, some additional health and safety procedures, some more signage, some more staffing to make those happen. So that's kind of that's the end of my presentation. And we'll I guess save the questions till the end. Sorry, can you guys hear me still? I just got to. Yeah, okay, I got a text message that I couldn't be seen anymore, so I'm still here. So
okay. I hope people could hear the rest of your presentation. I'm not sure when you dropped off. We just saw a chat in there, so okay, well, thank you very much, Craig. I'm pretty sure most people heard all of that, if not most of it, but I think we're very excited to hear about Park Pass, everything that it's going to evolve into. That's very exciting. So thank you very much. Next, we have Pam Walther-Mabee joining us, and I will pass her the mic next. Unmute yourself, Pam. Can you unmute on the Teams feature?
There we go. I've got the unmute. Now
there you are.
Getting that share back to where I'm at. Perfect. Thank you, Tori. Sorry about that, everybody. I'd like to, say thanks for this opportunity to get together and to learn from each other. I wanted to provide a little bit of background about the Grand River Watershed. some of you might know more about us than others, but we're in the middle of Southern Ontario. We're comprised of 36 member municipalities, and we have actually 5 public health boards that advise us. So sometimes it's a little bit difficult for us and a little bit interesting that we have all of these public health boards. And during our initial staging of COVID, what happened in one area wasn't necessarily what happened in the other area. So that brought about its own unique challenges. And sometimes at any given day or throughout the weeks, we have 12 active conservation areas, and they were all operating slightly different. To keep sane though, we followed the strictest group and made sure that all of our areas compiled with those orders, and even if that meant we went above and beyond what was required. We did deviate slightly sometimes to follow separate public health orders that pertain to beaches and face masks from the Wellington, Guelph, and Dufferin health units. So sometimes we had to go against the grain. But like the other CAs, our conservation authorities, I should say, in or near the GTA, we had many days of summer where we were required to close due to high volumes of visitors. And traditionally that was on Saturdays and Sundays throughout the summer by about 2 p.m. And some parks even had midweek closures happening because of capacity. Our boat launches were full for weeks at a time this year, and our camping reservations were at our self-imposed limits. So while in overall our revenues weren't the highest they've ever been, we've had visitation like we've never seen. So part of this response, we wanted to talk about enforcement, and with that high visitation comes enforcement. By the end of July, we had it figured out, but until then, it was a bit of a work in progress. At the beginning, in the initial shutdown period, when we opened for day use, we felt like it was slightly like supervised chaos. We had no idea what was going to occur. We were watching other conservation authorities face the same staggering volumes, and all of us were working towards controlling that chaos. The patrons that were coming to the parks in droves weren't our regular patrons. They were openly defiant to close signs. They piled garbage everywhere. We had human feces and lots of belligerent visitors. And this outraged our regular customers. So we decided early on we had to hit the pause button, close back temporarily, and regroup. And what we did in that regrouping, we adapted, but we hired some external security to supplement our reduced security guard staffing complement. We hadn't brought on our student security guards at this point. And in some areas, we had to provide paid duty OPP. The OPP were spending time in our areas helping us manage issues anyway, so this was a cooperative solution to coverage. And in other areas that we wish we could get some paid duty support, this wasn't an option, so we needed to adapt. What we did, we created operation plans, capacity plans, management plans. We worked through enforcement strategies to ensure that our senior staff knew what was expected of them and what wasn't. We made it clear that no issue of trespass or entry was worth putting a staff member in harm's way, and that we would work to compliance, but that safety of our staff was a priority. We hosted POA training, an online version with emphasis on mental health and operating in a pandemic, to consider yourself first and to identify coping strategies, to use your vehicle to maintain as a shield to maintain distance. As the timeline progressed, we moved into the active day use season. We brought on students for gate operations, maintenance, and security guards. Our security guard training, normally an in-class training with many scenarios and that lots of interaction, was moved online. And then we had to increase our on-site discussion because we were replacing those training scenarios that we couldn't do as a group. We also included some external training, and that was provided with an online service provider, outside service provider, sorry. The largest challenge, though, was the public and how they reacted to the daily park closings when the conservation areas reached capacity. And the increased use at all of our passive lands, it just meant people were everywhere. GRCA is fortunate to have a well-trained provincial offense officer group already who regularly checked in with their gate attendants, security guards, and supported the efforts, and anyone who'd be closing. So sometimes it was a security guard who'd be standing at the gate to close, an internal guard. We did have hired security guards as well, but but it was really the experience of our senior staff that helped manage the anxieties of less experienced staff and to make sure that they modeled safe interactions for the rest. I would say of the lessons learned, it's all about planning. So I can't say it enough. Document and plan. Risk assessments, biohazards, capacity, site management, operation plans, SOPs. These are great tools. And having standards and procedures on paper, they provide support for good decision making. And so that was probably our biggest lesson learned. And the other lesson we learned is about mental health support. And this is really important. Enforcement events have the potential to turn into PTSD situations. They can be upsetting and have lasting impact for both new and seasoned employees alike. So we upped our game in mental health support. Signage and communication. It seems to be a revolving door with signage. So many updates, continuous evolution with 12 active conservation areas, 67 kilometers of trails, numerous passive properties that needed signage and inspections. The whole team was busy. So you can see in the picture, our first version of COVID-19 was a laminated sign. We evolved it many times. Our success throughout COVID was a direct result of the CA management team. So every person on our team stepped up in new ways to adapt to changing priorities. And resilience was one of the ways we were able to manage these multiple signage evolutions. And one superintendent in particular stepped up to streamline procurement of signage for everyone and to help funnel that distribution through one point. And that was an invaluable service to the group. In the past, for communication, our park team met once a month in person. However, with COVID, we needed to change the way we communicate. We needed to communicate a lot more as a group, sometimes even meet on a daily basis. And we utilized Teams, the platform that we're working through now, and connected in small groups. And we utilized our administration support, and we really worked around the clock at those first few days, as I'm sure the rest of you did too. Our signage requirements we felt were informed largely by public health. We also looked to see what our regional municipal partners were doing, and including our conservation areas working group. We'd take what everybody else was doing and convert it to our own use. So you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, be smart, stay 6 feet or 2 meters apart. I think we made 100, 200. I don't know how many signs of those we made, but they're everywhere. Another part of what we were doing, we took a look at the Marsh Insurance COVID document, and we recreated our own internal response just to assess how we were doing and what it looked like to our insurance provider. So it was a major document. I'm sure you've all taken a look at it for yourselves and thought, how do I react to this? Well, we decided to do a formal response, like I said, just for our own internal use. And it was specific to each conservation area, and it really outlined where we were meeting the requirements of our signage. I think signage tends to make you feel like you're doing something to control the people and how they interact in your area. But ultimately, I think park presence is what makes people comply with rules. Our senior staff, the flying the flag, they like to call it, security guards, maintenance, gate attendants, they're all reminders to the public that they're a paying guest of the site and that their actions are being monitored. So in this picture here, you'll see the dumping station slide. We added some extra sanitation procedures to the dumping station. It's never a bad thing to have extra sanitation there. And that just shows one of our maintenance workers sanitizing the tap. As you guys all feel the same, our customer service and our gate attendants, how we make people work through the gate, how we function with having one person at a time coming through. And a big thing that was kind of sad for a lot of us, but amenities were closed. And at some point, the beaches were closed, so that's why the waterfront show closed. But we put amenity close sign on the pavilions. For a while, it was on the playgrounds. And saying amenity was a good generic version that could go on a number of different areas. So managing visitation for us meant managing capacity. And I'll walk you through the steps that we took, and then I'll talk about how we seem to overcome some of our capacity issues. So right away, like everyone else, we closed the parks and we halted our camping reservation system. We created safe operating plans to open with staff on site and to have no visitors coming into the area. So some of our conservation areas require staff to have multiple responsibilities, including dam operation. And we wanted to ensure those that had significant responsibilities were not being influenced by having other outside visitors. So some parks were closed quite quickly. We worried about what working group, who was working with where, and what if someone inside of the individual working group got sick. So we started to manage our operational plan. We had to train 4 of our senior staff to cancel reservations. We traditionally used a reservation service provider to do that. But so we didn't have to incur extra costs because we were trying to manage our expenses. We said that we would take on canceling the reservations for us for the months of May and June for the overnight campers. And we canceled around 1,500 reservations in those 2 months time period. When we reopened for day use, we were overwhelmed with new users who had never attended our parks before. These people hadn't come. They didn't understand about our regular conservation area systems, let alone what it was like in COVID. So we had very limited student support at the beginning. Like other places, we didn't know what COVID was going to mean, how long we would be open for, if we were going to have different orders that we had to respond to. So it was difficult. It was a really difficult time. Senior staff were operating, no student support, grass wasn't getting cut, because we really had to do different priorities and focus on what mattered. But by the end of May, we could open up our seasonal camping. We didn't have washrooms or shower services, and we required them to have self-contained units. And we began to come back around. Our students started, at first we only brought back students that had experience, so at least we didn't have to do that on-site training in the same way, and it worked out really well. By July 6th, we opened for overnight camping, and we kept our reservations around the 50% mark. Grand River Parks traditionally have high day use numbers, and to support the capacity plans that we created, we needed to limit services. So only half of our regular students that were coming in were needed. We didn't have our pools open. So we didn't have pools open, we didn't have food concessions open, we didn't have our boat rentals or that sort of thing at the beginning of July. By July 15th, we realized that we were circling around the same item again. How do we close the parks in an efficient way? So we launched the Capacity app. The Capacity app was made by our IT department. They're wonderful. And it can be reached when you look right on the main page of GRCA's website. At the bottom there, you'll see for the status of park operations, visit www.grandriver.com/park status. So we could tell people to go there, check out how is the park. Is the park full? Is it nearing capacity? Is there space? And that's the page that they would get pushed to. So it would show that visitors were welcome, the beach was open. In some cases, the beach would close very quickly, but visitors were still welcome if they wanted to partake in other activities. So one of the challenges we had at this point was whether or not we would reopen the park in the middle of the day after a park reached capacity. And we made the difficult decision not to. We had much discussion about it, and we decided that once the park reached capacity and we were turning our customers away, having to repeat that action multiple times would only cause dangerous lineups. And many of our parks do not have a long runway for entrances, so we didn't want them going out onto the roads queuing up. One of the side benefits was that the people who were in parks with camping, they were thrilled because by 6 o'clock when the day use people left, they'd have their beaches near empty for them to enjoy. So you can see up at the top, it says the Capacity app was viewed over 100,000 times since July 15th. And checking some of our web analytics, This was the third most viewed page on our website. Oddly enough, the Lower Gorge was the most views with 240,000 views from July 15th, and then Rockwood had 141,000 views. So it just shows how many people are actually interested in coming to the website for information. So it's wonderful. After we sorted how to get people into the park and how camping would work, and then we turned to the next largest asset in our system, and that was the tubing concession at Lower Gorge. We had plans to reopen this activity. They involved creating an operational plan for that, including how we're going to sanitize tubes and equipment. And to aid with that sanitation, we needed to borrow all the life jackets from the other conservation areas that weren't using them to ensure that we had 72 hours between rentals. So we were lucky again with our IT department. They created a tubing reservation app, and it was originally supposed to manage the lower quarry visitation, but we didn't open up that conservation area this year. We left the quarry shut. And it was a great innovation for us that we can take into future when we look at operating other concession items. Streamlined our process. They could do everything online. It required less face-to-face interaction at the point of sale. And we still needed staff. It didn't replace staff. It just helped manage and streamline the process. And the biggest lesson I would say we learned throughout this part of managing visitation and managing capacity is that we relied on a lot of different entities. It's IT, finance for us, communication support, senior management, central services, HR, and other conservation authorities. We really pay attention to what others are doing, and not that we want to mirror what we're doing with them, but you kind of want it all to be similar type idea. And this year we had support from everyone. I would say that our staffing challenge, we nicknamed it the Doomsday Challenge. It was what happens if a whole work group needs to be off, and how do we support that operation? When in some cases, the next closest person is an hour and a half away. We made it through the busy season without having to work through Doomsday, but it's always there in our thoughts. I also think some of the other challenges about this massive visitation push is burnout and COVID fatigue. They're very real, and I worry for the mental health of those people that I work with. We've worked so hard this year, and as you guys can attest to too, there seems to be no end in sight. And all of us have lives outside of work, and pressures that are faced by our coworkers, they could come out in strange and weird ways during your work hours. So it's not just our job, but it's all the other parts about our job that add to that COVID stress. One of the things that we've done to help alleviate this is our Mental Health Mondays, and we just send out messages of support and acknowledgement throughout the year through teams about our mental health. Moving on to health and safety, like CVC, we're fortunate to have a health and safety coordinator at GRCA. And without the support of that position, we wouldn't have been able to create so many great SOPs this year, health and safety checklists, fact sheets, information sheets. To walk you through our process, this is a super simplified version, but we look at the actions that we want to do. We create a plan of how we do them. We share the action with the conservation staff and get their feedback, and then a draft SOP is created. The health and safety coordinator and senior management review the draft SOP with more questions, more feedback, and sometimes an SOP can be reworked 10 times before it's ready. And even now, like Craig said, they're reviewing and updating their SOPs. That's our next step, to have feedback based on actual use, what needs to be changed, how we can make that SOP better. And I was trying to look at the list of new SOPs that were created, and it's over 30 times this year that we've repeated this process. Plans, biohazard risk assessments, gatehouse operation plans, and sometimes they had to be completed for each park individually, so that information is times 11. When I looked at preparing for today's discussion, I thought, oh my gosh, we've produced so many documents this year and done so much great work. Some of the most innovative solutions came forward too during COVID, and one was the use of foggers. I'd never heard of the tool, fogging tool, but it's a widespread surface disinfection tool. And we chose to focus on staff work areas and the work vehicles to fog those. And this is in addition to your regular disinfection of touch points protocol, but it's a unique tool and that we just didn't have it prior to COVID. We did choose to limit our activities this year and not offer things like I said about the pools at Brant and Bing and the splash pad at Elora Gorge, the Elora Quarry. We didn't open them this year. We didn't offer rentals for canoes or kayaks, nor did we have food concessions open. And we're going to work to looking at some of those SOPs to opening them in 2021, but it depends on really the state of the pandemic and where we're at. I think another one of the challenges that we faced were public complaints with respect to enforcement. Some people expected us to enforce groups congregating in what they perceived to be an appropriate number of users. And we took the approach of education and physical distancing from other groups. And while we kept the numbers of groups, as the season progressed, when the numbers increased to 25 and things like that, we still had other patrons who weren't comfortable with that many people together at the same time. So just to, I don't know if any other people have had public health inspectors, but we did have 2 complaints, official complaints to the public health about 2 different locations, and both were regarding the capacity of beaches. So one health inspector came to the conservation area at one of the complaints to do an inspection and a document check. And the other one did a verbal and through email document check. And both cases, we had no other orders to follow up on. They were satisfied with our capacity plans and our operation plans, and with the support of the evidence from the staff on site. So that's really good news to have, to say that even though the public health came out to view us, that we met all of our compliances. So yeah, I would just say that health and safety remains a top priority for us as we move forward through the pandemic, and that we have a lot of work to do this winter. And COVID's been a huge challenge, but we've managed to find many positive outcomes. And I think we've engaged a new group of users that hopefully they'll come back and use the park at a time that isn't quite so crazy. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Pam. Much appreciated. I do want to take one moment to just remind everybody of the Q&A feature. Please type your questions in there if you have any, upvote your favorites, and like I said, we will be answering those at the end of the webinar should any come through. So up next, we do have Bill Lidster. So please welcome the guy that you see walking around the workshop every year in a cowboy hat. Take it away, Bill.
Yeah, sorry, Tori, I'm just trying to figure out here how to unmute my thing and share my screen.
Unmuted?
I'm
First
unmuted.
part, check.
I have it up on the screen. Yes, and I'm not wearing my cowboy hat during my presentation. If I was going to be on the screen, I would have had my cowboy hat on. But anyways, good afternoon, everyone. Wow, what an interesting season we've all had, to say the least. So again, before I get started, I'd like to thank Tori and Dave Orr and the entire organizing committee for pulling these webinars together. I think it was very important to continue to have something for the workshop. And also, before I start with presentation, I'll give you a little bit of overview of our CA operations. So we have 16 full-time staff, including myself, and our operations is split up into 2 groups. CA operations that look after the active parks per se, which are parks that we have a fee to get in, and then we have non-active parks that our property management group looks after. Again, I think one of the successes for us is that myself and my team, we've been together for over 10 years. Some of us been together as long as 17 years. And the biggest thing is trusting one another. And again, our senior manager, Terry Liu, has just come on board looking after us for a couple years. And again, thanks to her leadership, was another reason for our success. And I'd like to mention Jeff Payne, our director, for his support. So, outline of my presentation here is
Phil, can you share your screen again?
Oh. Didn't. Share. Yeah.
Don't see it yet.
Okay. Here. Close. Yes. Can you see it, Tori?
Yep, you're good. You're good.
Okay.
First slide.
All right. Back in action. All right, so outline my presentation. We're going to look at some enforcement issues and tactics, signage and communications, and managing visitation and health and safety. So the first slide I have here is some enforcement statistics. So what I wanted to show with this slide is our visitation pre-COVID, during the closure, and after the closures. So what we'd like to highlight there is that the enforcement tactics that we used shows that we were successful during the closures, as the visitation rate dropped substantially. And so we have 9 provincial offences officers, and we added 2 additional CVC security officers in August. And I just want to let everyone know that we only have 1 provincial offences officer that does enforcement all the time. The rest of the provincial offences officers are superintendents, assistant superintendents, and myself that manage the parks as well as doing that. And we also assist in our flood patrol for our organization. So here we are with the pandemic. And if anybody remembers, in the springtime, there was potential for flooding. So we were on flood alert and doing enforcement. So we spent about 1,675 hours patrolling 12 closed areas with 75 access points. And our watershed is quite large for all our parks. So we go from Island Lake in Orangeville all the way to Rattray Marsh in Mississauga along the shores of Lake Ontario, which is a 70-kilometer trip one way. We installed 75 park closed signs, no trespassing signs installed, half a kilometer of fencing installed and repaired several times due to non-compliance. And again, our statistics show our success, and we gave out about 175 warning notices and about 100 verbal warnings. Again, we work with our local municipalities for additional parking signs outside of our park boundaries. Sometimes that worked, sometimes it created problems other places, so that was a learning experience. I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with our 2 conservation areas, Bell Fountain Conservation Area that we own and manage, and the Badlands, which is owned by the Ontario Heritage Trust but managed by us. Very popular tourist areas, and for years there's been a substantial increase of visitation in those areas. So thanks to the assistance of the OPP and the Town of Caledon bylaw, they had Bell Fountain and Badlands locked down for us pretty good, so we could focus on some of the other areas that we saw bigger issues. Also, as due diligence, when the closures come out in the province announced stages, enforcement was classified as an essential service. So we had to carry essential services letters, and we were allowed to work out in the field. And also, as Pam mentioned, is that, you know, we went round and round talking to people, and it does wear on us. So we did our due diligence, and we allowed some of our provincial offenses officers, well, all of our provincial offenses officers, except for myself, to work from home 1 day a week to work on other planning initiatives. Signage and communications. Wow. Again, I think that this was something that, thanks to Sandy Camplin and her team, and as well as Tori, that when we first closed the parks, it was constant communication between parks and our marketing team that all our parks were closed. And again, we let people know why we were closing, which I think was key. And then when we opened, is at first we were all gung ho, oh yeah, let's let everybody know that we're opening up our parks and everything. And Terry LaRue stepped in and said, wait a minute here, maybe why don't we just open up our parks quietly and see what happens? And wow, that was the best decision that we ever made. So again, thanks to Sandy and her team, we were just pumping out messaging on the website, answering phone calls to let people know, again, to follow some of the guidelines that were put out by the local health units in the province, that we were asking people to select the property closest to them. We were asking them to limit their stay so that everybody could enjoy their experience. Did it work 100%? Not 100%, but I think that we were very successful. And again, the key message that I want to get across again is that as we open in our stages is, again, driving home what services were available, what to expect from our visitors when they got there, and again, trying to get them to stay to the closest park to their home. Some signage that we used. You'll notice this is on the left-hand side. You'll see our park closed, no trespassing signs that we first put up. As every senior person here knows, is our worst thing that we hate to spend money on is signs, because signs don't work. So what we did is we designed the park closed signs so that down the road we could use them. We got criticized a little bit because people were asking, well, why is the park closed? And we're like, well, are you watching the news? So we did that at the entrances, and then once we opened, we put signage in the park that related to COVID. Again, increased our cleaning, disinfections, and again, we put a little bit of onus on the visitors by letting them know that by not practicing these measures, use is at your own risk. As I mentioned, signs don't manage people, people manage people. I thought I would get the crowd riled up with this. Our senior manager showed this to me, and every time I see this sign, it just brings a smile to my face. So I thought I would share it with the group. Managing visitation. So I thought I would show a couple of slides, because pictures say 1,000 words, on some of the challenges that we had when we started to open. Terracotta Bell Fountain, the Badlands. Okay, so again, when the province announced the framework for reopening, we started to come up with a plan. So, you know, behind the scenes, late night emails, meetings, Terry, Jeff, and I coming up with a plan, working with our superintendents and our whole team to come up with an approach that would work for everyone. So, as part of stage one, what we did is we opened for passive use, no fees, no services. And the good thing about that is that we had buy-in from our senior people at the office to bring back a lot of our casuals to help manage the people, because I'm always advocate for people managing people. And plus, again, when we closed our parks on March 24th, we were in full swing of getting ready for a maple syrup program. And we basically dropped everything to close the park. So we had some cleanup to do, and we had to get ready for our next phases of opening. So as everyone's aware, with the way the province was initiating the stages and everything, we're making decisions based on the best information available at the time. And some of that changed overnight. I can remember a few mornings coming into work with the staff and saying, while you were sleeping, Terry and Jeff and I found this out. And again, we readjusted our plan, but we did have a plan. So after the passive opening with no fees and everything, we've seen a huge increase in visitation. And these weren't our usual visitors. These were first time people that were coming out that had no idea what a conservation area was. And again, it's just passing on the information on the expectations and asking them what they were there to, what they would like to do. For stage three, or stage two, sorry, limited, we opened the washrooms when we reinstated the fees. You know, it was a collective consensus that it doesn't justify putting fees unless we have some services available. So that's when we started to open up the washrooms. And then stage three, we had some rentals, watercraft rentals on at Island Lake and Ken Willans. So some of the mitigation measures we put in place is that we limited the number of visitors at each property. And again, as Craig mentioned, because of the safe physical distancing. And this was interesting because it could change depending on the weekend, the flow of people, how people flowed through each individual conservation area. Some of them were drawn to the water, so we had to limit parking down there. So what we did was we had a number of parking lots open, and we tried to disperse people in the parking lots to try to disperse them throughout the parks. We also were lucky enough to have our education team redeploy some of their staff, and we introduced a conservation interpreters program. And what these folks did was we noticed that the visitation in some of our non-active areas were seeing a tremendous increase of visitation. So again, with limited staff resources, the conservation interpreters were out in those areas just letting people know what they could do, what they couldn't do. Again, relaying the message, if it was busy, go somewhere else. And again, as I mentioned, it was challenging keeping up to the provincial announcements, but we stayed our course and we never opened up completely in our different stages until we were 100% ready to go. But that was usually within three to 5 days of after the announcement. And again, the expectation from the public was as soon as the province announcement that we had this magic light switch that we turned on and we were ready to go. What else here? And then for some of the watercraft rental stuff, when we opened up for watercraft rentals, that was an interesting scenario because the challenge for us is how do we disinfect the watercraft, particularly the life jackets. So we did a lot of research and everything, and there was we couldn't find a disinfectant out there that wouldn't hurt the integrity of the life jackets themselves. So we had to go back to the old-fashioned soap and water, let them sit for 3 days. So again, we had limited watercraft available on a daily basis, and our life jackets, we let them sit for 4 days before, or 3 days before they went into use. And then the next was a reservation system. Like other conservation authorities, reservation system was implemented at Bell Fountain and Cheltenham Badlands. Unfortunately for us, our reservation system, theoretically it was good, but the system that we were using, it technically didn't work. And again, if it wasn't for Sandy and her team, Tori and our frontline folks at the parks, they're the ones that made the reservation system work. But in theory, the reservation system for those high use areas is the way to go. It's a great way to manage people, and it's a great way to maximize your revenues. So, and it was an opportunity to try some new ideas out there. We had some contactless payment where we could, and also at the Cheltenham Badlands and Bell Fountain, we tried one-way trails. For the most part, they worked okay, and so I say it was greater than 50% success, so it's a success. For the Badlands, the picture on the right-hand side is the Badlands on the feature boardwalk there. It's hard to tell, but we had social distancing cues, that we had a spot where people could stand and look over the feature, blocked off the next section, and then opened up the other section for people to have a look at the feature, which is where everybody's drawn to. Health and safety. Wow, as managers, we all know, staff and visitor health and safety is our top priority. Like other conservation authorities, our health and safety coordinator put together safe working measures during a pandemic guideline. That was ongoing updates on those, and Tori did a lot of that work. Doing the research, we did utilize some of the guidelines that were produced by the province. So we wrote a lot of our health and safety measures for the operations of the park and got it blessed by the health and safety folks. We were also inspected by actually the federal health department. They came out to Island Lake to have a look, and it was upon a complaint, and I walked her through everything that we had in place, and we were very proud that once again we went over and above what the requirements were for health and safety. The picture on the right hand side is at the Island Lake Rental Center. Because of the location that we were in for the regional public health, we made masks mandatory, and we went one step further where we had no touch service. Somebody would come in, point to what they wanted, and staff would get it. We also, again, PPE, tons of additional PPE. We went to contactless soap dispensers. You can't tell very well in this picture, but we put some custom physical barriers for separation between the staff and the visitors. And sorry, I'm going to back up here. I have a couple other notes. Also, when we first started out, we had one person one person per vehicle while we were out doing our enforcement patrols. Eventually we had two, but masks had to be worn. We didn't have enough vehicles in our operations fleet, so due to the office being closed, we got additional vehicles from the head office and used them. And then as an extra precaution for our casual staff, we dispersed them out through a number of our buildings within our conservation area. So we had little working groups to make sure that the physical distancing was adhered to, and that they felt comfortable for that. And originally, when we first had our parks closed, we actually designated, in our washing buildings, we designated a stall for each employee that was on site. So that was an additional measure there. And then, so the summary is, again, we'd like to thank all of our casual workers. They are our frontline workers out there. Again, one of the keys is collaboration and trust. You know, we all had a job, we had a plan, people had jobs to do, we all did our job, and we complimented one another. So that was awesome. And making decisions based on the best information available at the time, which could be different at 8 o'clock in the morning than it was at 4 o'clock in the morning. We saw a 53% increase in visitation overall in 2019, and we did make our revenue targets for most of the parks. So we made over $1 million in our CAs, and also our property crew and our CA operations crew. We installed 3 sign plans at our parks. We opened up a natural playground at Island Lake, and we had 2 pavilions built throughout the summer. So we still ended up getting a lot of work done, but again, it made us look at our programs and what offerings we're offering now, and reevaluate and look at what's the best value for the customers that we can offer to them. Because again, when it came to the parking and everything for it, is that we had a lot of staff just parking cars to try to get people spread out through the park. So again, we're not out of the woodwork yet. You know, we're getting ready for winter operations, but we're already scaling back on some of our winter operations and offerings, and then getting ready for next summer. So, well, you know, thanks everyone for taking the time to come to these. Again, it's very important, and without your attendance, these wouldn't be successful. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bill. Much appreciated. Okay, so rolling right along, our final presenter today is Gorge Costie. So Bill, if you could stop sharing your screen, that's perfect. We'll introduce Gorge. Please give a warm virtual welcome. Hi, Gorge.
Hey, thanks, Tori. David, thanks also for your work behind the curtain there, and thanks for allowing me to share with everybody the Hamilton Conservation Authority experience while I represent our HCA. But before I get going, and before I share my file here, I do want to thank the Conservation Authority Workshop Committee, because without you guys, we couldn't be here. And I know there's tireless amount of work that went into that, so I do thank the committee members, but also want to make a shout out to the Conservation Authority Workshop participants to do your part. Let your supervisor know you were here. Let your director know you were here. Let them hear what your share your takeaway message from what you learned today. That's what's important to us, so that we can stay relevant and be part of the workshop. In my presentation today, I'm going to just start to get ready to cue it up. I'm going to try to show how the HCA, Hamilton Conservation Authority, how we navigated and continue to navigate the pandemic. We initially forecasted budgets to be buried into the red, and we with the reopening, we managed to turn things around in the same way that you heard the other presentations here. Unreal resurgence. The people really, really like us. Our conservation authorities is a thing. It was tremendous. Our budgets turned into the black. We exceeded 2019 revenues with all the shutdowns and the delays that we would have had in reopening our conservation areas. So it was really an amazing turnabout of effort. We avoided layoffs at the HCA. We avoided dipping into our financial reserve. So let me see if I can get this up for us, Dave. How we doing there?
You can go full screen, Gorge. You're live.
Oh, you know what? I'm going to back up again. Let me try this all over again. Forgot the little magic key Tori told me about.
Oh, the audio button.
Audio button. I've got a small video I'll share with everybody as we go through, and we'll do this again for us here. See if this picks it up for you, Dave. Are we on again?
All right.
We're good?
You can go full screen now.
Okay, thanks. And you know, I've embedded in this presentation here my comments for enforcement, for signage, for communication, for the managing of visitation, health and safety. And really it was a lot of what everybody else here has been sharing today. So I didn't take pictures of our 6 feet stay apart signage and whatever. Our signage, communications, health and safety protocols, new safe work procedures here at HCA, they were all reflective of neighboring conservation authorities, provincial parks, community businesses, and I think the public really has been through and has seen enough of this. They seem to know that COVID-19 was out there and to take the safety precautions, and we're continue to learn. So while we didn't open up all of our, we opened up most of our conservation areas, some a little bit delayed, less our wave action pool at Confederation Park. We had no boat rentals, we had no food service, we had no pavilion rentals, we had no youth camps, and as closing the conservation areas was hard, I could tell you that reopening was even harder. So most of us are familiar with a watershed map, and this is ours. And
Gord, do you want to go full screen with your presentation?
It's showing full screen on mine.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Are you guys able to pick that up?
Can you start your slideshow from the beginning on the slideshow tab?
Hang on for a sec then. Let's try again. Can you see it, Tori?
Still looks like I can see your slides on the side. At the top toolbar, slideshow. Very top of your screen.
Okay, I'll try it up here.
Yeah. Go to slideshow on that ribbon on the top. You're close. You got your home, insert, design. Up a little more. Close. Keep going right. You see slideshow.
I see the slideshow at the bottom. So it doesn't pick it up there.
No, you're on the home tab right now, but if you go to the slideshow tab, you can start your slideshow from the beginning and it will go full screen.
Oh.
There you are. Then click from the beginning. Top left.
Did that work for you?
Oh, keep going to the left. Left.
Oh, sorry.
There you are. From beginning.
From beginning. Did you see the opening slide?
Come on now.
David worked some magic for us.
Maybe you can unshare and share it again.
Yeah.
Stay with
maybe
us,
I'll do-
folks. Play it from the beginning.
Shows full screen on my screen.
Can you switch to the next slide? Just to make sure we can see that you're switching from slide to slide. You might just have to do it this way. Have you switched to the next slide?
Yes. It's Watershed slide.
Hmm. Okay, exit full screen mode. Go back to your thumbnails in your PowerPoint. Oh, there we
Yes.
go. I can see your watershed. Yep, so you might just have to do it this way,
Okay.
if that works.
Well, let's try it that way. We could see it.
Okay.
And I'll technical difficulties. It's live. It's TV. So you see the watershed slide.
Sure do.
Okay. 11,000 acres. 6 major conservation areas, plus one other, Westfield Heritage Village, Valens Lake, Christie Lake, Dundas Valley, Confederation Beach Park with Wild Waterworks, 50-point conservation areas, 1.5 million visitors this year annually, 145 kilometers of managed trails. I'll move to the next slide. We really wanted to start with this Spencer Gorge conservation area and the why the people come here and why they're visiting this area. Now, Tori, you can see this Webster Falls image.
Nope. I can see it queued up. I can see your slide 3. I can see a tiny image of it. There it is.
Is it like that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is the trifecta. Webster Falls is our one of the main areas there. You see the cobblestone bridge in the background. We'll go through the deck this way. A little smaller for you. You get the same idea, I guess. We'll work this through 2 falls, a bit of a winter and fall picture of it here. And of course, the final of the trifecta of Spencer Gorge is the Dundas Peak. And here, the Dundas Peak, one of the most iconic places to be in southern Ontario. And people just swarm to this thing, like they do some of our other Conservation Authority favorite spots. So we started different management measures. We started doing even visitor, we started doing shuttle busing, but issues started to appear. We started to become just too oversubscribed. People were coming out to the conservation areas in record numbers, and we were struggling with shuttling the people around. Too many people out at our conservation areas we were bringing 1,000+ people out to a 157-acre conservation area, and the lines were just, we couldn't move them out should there be an emergency situation, weather, any type of evacuation that needed to be done. Best practice for all of us really is a driveway to driveway experience. Move the people through our areas. So like at Badlands, yeah, we had cars parked all over the place. We worked very closely with the municipal enforcement agencies in Hamilton to handle the enforcement part of the roadways, and they would tag vehicles for unauthorized parking, have the people move through our front entrances whenever possible. We had to remove dangerous infrastructure, and the visitor experience was so diminished. Our trails looked like this. It was like you were walking up to some sort of event, and we became really, and quite frankly, just too popular to ignore. The people were using our safety wall and barricade as a viewing platform, and they would bypass everything. It was clearly out of control. It wasn't good for us. It wasn't good for the visitors. It was no longer good for the nearby community or the city of Hamilton. Now, I don't know whether this video will play, but I'll give it a shot. This is a video, Tori, that we found on YouTube last fall. I'll click it and see if it works. I haven't had much luck so far with my presentation here, but I hope you can see the images. No, it won't play from this, but this was the result of it. What the video showed us was, here's the Dundas Peak, and the challenge that we were facing. There's 150 people gathered around the peak. It was not safe, and it was no longer something that we could ignore. So we used the pandemic, the shutdown. We didn't open this area until fall, September 19th, installing safety fencing around the facility. It enhanced really opportunity for selfie photos, for people to see across the Spencer Gorge and staying on our lookout platforms. We really didn't think that people had to be any closer to our waterfalls than this to get their images. That was safe. That made us feel better about what we were providing, but we still had more work to do, and our construction crew was busy. This is what we were dealing with in our management from last year to this year, was to correct oversubscribed parking areas, where this area would go from the parking on the right to the upper image here in 2019. We'd have over 500 cars park in this parking lot. We restored the parking lot and started our version of the reservation system. We brought in private security here to help manage our conservation areas for the reservation system, launched at Spencer Gorge in September. And they were able to enhance staff and allowed the superintendents to concentrate on our operations, on supervising casual staff and exceeding visitor expectations. At this property, there's a complete hardened slide gate with picket style fencing right at the property line. Advanced reservations were required and were checked by security. Here we also built our own brand new modern gatehouse with automatic gates and pay station, so that we would be able to have control of the people going into the park. If you didn't have a reservation, you were turned around. And here, unlike Credit Valley and unlike Halton, we stayed with the Camus Group. They're our hardware software supplier we were already under contract with. This was really an extension of the reservations for Spencer Gorge, and here they were able to put out the reservation page that they've been working on, and we had very few bumps on it. In the Hamilton reservation for day use hike, there was a $10 fee for all reservations, even including membership pass holders, and we managed 8,300 parking reservations here at the Gorge. We did the same over at Westfield Heritage Village at the beginning of the pandemic during the shutdown to rebuild an old storage facility building in the front of the park. We turned it into our next gatehouse. And at the gatehouse, the construction crew, the carpenters, they really moved this one also into the same type of entranceway with the auto gates and the automatic pay station, so that we either would deal with the visitors at the entranceways, or they'd be able to use the same branding of pay stations here. For our campgrounds at Valens Lake and over at 50 Point, reopened in June, mid-June, June 19th. We captured that date so that we could have the opportunity to be open for Canada Day, which we did. And at Valens, 125 campsites with power, 100 without. It was an amazing turnaround. We didn't limit the number of campsites, and our revenues and permits increased by 40% over 2019, including the shutdown. Partly we get there by being open year round, by having winter camping too. We've got 56 winter campsites now being booked for winter camping at Valens Lake this winter. And in the lower right-hand picture there, you see a picture of a cabin that's just being built at Valens. We've got 8 camp cabins. We didn't go with yurts. We went with board and batten cabins, and they've got their own powder washrooms complete with flush toilets. That'll be part of our post-pandemic viewing and operations in 2021 when they're ready to go. Also part of where we moved from, and it was an extension of where we were from a year ago, partly presented here, was our autogate systems, but they played a huge part of the role of how we operate our conservation areas. 75,000 vehicles made payments to these machines in 2000, where we either don't have gate attendants, don't have a gatehouse. We sold 8,000 membership passes with swipe cards for them to gain access into these conservation areas sunrise to sunset. And it is the branding, whether you've got a gate attendant like here at Valens, or they could swipe their camper pass or barcoded pass into that area. The Devil's Punch Bowl was one that we've highlighted before because it was so amazing. We put the autogate system on where we thought at this pay station here at Devil's Punch Bowl, where the cross is overlooking the city of Hamilton, we thought we were getting 2,000 cars using the property, till the security arm actually proved that we were getting 15,000 cars last year, and we surpassed 15,000 cars now this year. Dundas Valley, Hermitage, just around the corner from our Wood End office. Exact same type of entranceway. I'm just going to finish with a couple images like that. Tori, I'll be sending this back to you. In the Hermitage, so popular for the restored ruins, 200-year-old ruins. People come to see this beautiful setting in the middle of a 3,000-acre conservation area. Same with our Merrick, just one last out of all of the collection of new parking lots that we have here. No cash accepted. It's debit card, it's MasterCard, it's Visa, and it's all done electronically. And in 21, we'll extend just our passport idea, where people that have made purchases and have the barcode tickets, they can easily scan their ticket through any one of our gates, so they don't have to pay twice to visit 2 or 3 parking lots visiting Hamilton conservation areas, or show it to the gate attendant when on duty. So Tori, if you're still with me here a little bit, this is just my final slide. That was Valens Lake Canada Day last year, and I'm sorry you weren't able to get the full screen of this, but at the same time, I think you heard where we were with visitor management.
Okay, thank you so much, Gord. Really appreciate that presentation for us. I'm really sorry we couldn't make your tech work and see your nice video. It was such a beautiful aerial shot of all you have to offer. Really, really nice stuff. This does conclude the presentation portion of our webinar. Thanks warmly to our presenters for sharing and participating. just give you an option to head into the Q&A section of our webinar if you want to upvote those questions that you do want to see answered. To keep things moving along here, we will jump right into that Q&A portion now. So I'm going to ask our first question of Craig. Did you end up having to use the feature that limited postal code area from reservations or from reserving?
Oh, we didn't, and I think I'll maybe answer one of the other questions that was sent to me too about being fair for that. So no, we didn't implement that. Really, we didn't have. There hasn't been any restrictions on the government about moving since we reopened. When we were doing our park pilots prior to our official launch on May 22nd, we did use postal codes just so we had people near the park that we were piloting. Only those members were allowed to come to help us test out, but we didn't, COVID related, we haven't used that feature. I know the other question said, is it fair? We will probably only use that feature if the government tells us to use that feature. For example, right now, say if Waterloo Region Health Unit goes into a lockdown, and they're being instructed not to leave their house or leave their area or their zone, then we would probably use that. It's not necessarily, we're not treating people for COVID or assessing whether they have COVID or not, just following government direction, and that would be when we would use that feature. But we haven't had to use it yet. Right now we're in a red zone here in Halton Region, so if anything, it'll be us not being able to go to other places because we might be in lockdown before some of the other places. So.
Okay, thanks, Craig. Next question is addressed to all, so if there's somebody who feels particularly apt to answer this question, will you be providing winter programming, and would anything be different from summer COVID protocols due to cold conditions or increased COVID numbers?
I can start there.
Sure, Craig.
We're opening Glen Eden, and weather dependent. We hope to be open in a little under 4 weeks. So yeah, we will be offering winter program. We'll have our snow school going. We're still going to be offering cross-country ski rentals, snowshoe rentals at our other parks. But we hope to be, essentially, I wouldn't say fully operational with all the same programming services, but we will have our, Glen Eden will be open, and we are expecting 300,000+ visitors, hiring our 700+ staff. And being ready for whatever we've got. And again, as long as we follow, we've got a reservation system in place for the winter. All cash transactions will take place online, so there won't be anything at the site. We'll be managing visitation. I think we're in a pretty good place, and we're working closely with our health units too to make sure that disinfection of rental equipment, building capacities, park capacities, those types of things align with the strategies that public health wants in place. So we will be up and running.
All right, thanks, Craig. Does anyone else want to speak to this this question? Gord, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Tori. Well, all of our Hamilton conservation areas are open year-round, so we don't have any new protocols or new restrictions whatsoever. Our winter campers will still be going to Valens. There is a washroom facility that's open for them there, and people that buy the membership pass, they are using our facilities year-round to gain access into our park. So a lot of it will be touchless in the sense that they either pay the pay stations that are out there, or they see staff at the gatehouses. But our areas are busy 7 days a week, 12 months. I won't go as far as 365, but there's people actively in the conservation areas. We couldn't possibly want to go back to trying to close them off even for the winter time. We couldn't do it during a pandemic. They just want to be in our conservation areas, and they're curious and they're an eager group, and their daily ritual means getting out to touch the great outdoors through Hamilton conservation areas.
Thanks, Gord. Bill, you want to round it out?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Tori. Again, Credit Valley, we're making a few changes for our winter programs. Unfortunately, we won't have our ice huts available for rental. They're porous surfaces on the inside of the huts, and there's no way that we can disinfect it properly. And also, we had some work done on our dam last winter and we have low water, so we'll be providing ice fishing opportunities for people to come out and ice fish. We're also, with our opening of our natural playground up at Island Lake, we put a 0.5 kilometer trail around the outside. So we're hoping that we can put a skating trail around the natural playground. And then we're looking at putting smaller ice rinks out on the lake that could be reserved by groups of people. We still anticipate same as Craig, we're going to do cross-country ski rentals and snowshoe rentals down at Terracotta. Again, we've been speaking with the local health units on disinfecting protocols and everything, so not a whole lot's going to change for us, just some new ideas.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, Bill. Okay, so another question. I guess this is addressed to all. Did anyone experience issues with back doors being open because adjacent public-private properties were still open and accessible? Trail connectors, for example, Trans-Canada Trail, Oak Ridges Trail, or the Bruce Trail. Is there anyone that'd like to take a stab at that?
I can start off. Yeah, we had Bruce Trail travels through all of our parks in Mountsburg. And we abut up to regional forest tracks as well in some of our areas like Hilton Falls. So yeah, we definitely had people accessing those areas where we could. We worked with the owner of that property to ensure that they had closures in place so that they wouldn't come into our properties. But, we knew people were still coming in. We can only do so much, and as you know, we would put barriers, but again, people will go around them. But it was a deterrent, I would think, for honest people to put those signs and barricades in place. So, but yeah, we did have that problem, and again, we just adjusted some capacities in our park so that because we knew those people were coming in, just so we reduced overcrowding or limited crowding on our trails.
Thanks, Craig. Is there anyone else that wants to? Pam, you want to contribute? Yep.
Sure. Thanks, Tori. Yeah, we're similar to Craig. We don't have a Bruce or anything of those kind of natures, but we do have the Elora Cataract Trail that butts up to CVC there. So we would network with the other conservation areas, and we have the one near Hamilton, the Jerseyville S.C. Johnson Trail. So that's all I could say. We networked, we closed it, we tried the best that we could, and for the most part, it was successful. Trails are a little less invasive to us than coming into an active park with lots of infrastructure. A trail is usually parking lots, some garbage, that kind of thing.
Thanks, Pam.
Tori,
Yep.
one other group that we were challenged by was our municipal parking lots around the city, where there's municipal parking lots that circle the Dundas Valley, or out at 50 Point. We've got a municipal roadway and right-of-way right down to our beach area, and it was challenging to think that you could either control numbers or get them to come through proper gateways, and we're not done yet, but there's a lot of back doors, however that person phrased it there who called in those questions, and we're not done with the challenge yet because it's impossible to plug up all the holes. We couldn't do it during the close down. We can't even do it during operations. So we're working with the municipal partners as best we can. In some cases, buying up some of these right of ways and trying to work with the municipality to help control the numbers so that at least the people that are paying us coming into our facilities have fair access to the conservation areas when they come in.
Okay, thanks, Gord. Moving along here, we have a question from, let's see, a question from Julia. We're wondering, how did you handle team morale as staff's workloads increased, normal duties changed drastically, and just generally keeping staff upbeat while managing a park and services during this pandemic? This is addressed to all.
I can jump in first again here if you want.
Yeah, thanks,
I'm
Craig.
not sure we did, to be completely honest. We unfortunately had to make the difficult decision of doing some layoffs early on, and coming back, it was just all hands on deck, and it was go 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 right from the start. So I think we probably could have done a better job of that. Yeah, so I mean I guess that's what I have to say on it. I don't think we did a good enough job boosting morale, and especially those people that we unfortunately had to lay off coming back. I'll admit, I don't think we did as well as we should have.
Thanks for your honesty, Craig. Everything didn't go perfect this year. I mean, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, so it's nice to hear that perspective. Gord, would you like to add to that?
Well, I was going to really just echo some of what Craig said. We couldn't have thanked the staff enough. We couldn't seem to get connected, and we were run ragged. It was COVID fatigue for staff. We were feeling cracks. We were more resilient than we ever thought we ever had to be. I don't know how we reached those levels. And we still owe a lot of thanks to all of the staff, full-time staff, casual staff, and our is very grateful. And I don't know if I'll ever get to fully repay and thank all the staff for their efforts. I'm only hoping one day I really get that opportunity.
Thanks, Gord. Pam would also like to speak to this question.
Sure. I think it is a challenge, and it's an ongoing challenge, but I think a couple of things that I try to do more is communicate, using things like Teams, talking to people, giving some opportunity to share stories. I'm not physically present in the park as much as I used to be. I'm working from home. So that's kind of difficult. You don't have that same face-to-face interaction, or you're not sharing a cup of coffee and a donut. You're having to use different resources. So it has been hard. We've had layoffs too, and had changes in our departments. But I think if you can communicate and you can be real and show that, we as managers or supervisors or coworkers, it isn't always perfect for us. And we have times where our stress loads boil up and boil over. And I think you can exercise a little bit of kindness to your coworker. And I think that's really important, and just have some come from a place of understanding. And like you said, corporately, we have stuff we have to work on, and nobody knew a pandemic was coming. So we're not experts at this, but I think if we just connect and be open and communicate and do the best you can.
Bill, would you like to answer as well?
Yeah, I'll chime in here as well. And again, our superintendents, we did have an appreciation lunch for our casual staff, as we do every year. But again, I think the biggest disconnect is we weren't able to have all team meetings. And I think that hurt the morale a little bit. But again, it goes back to the trust issue that I emphasized in the presentation, is that, yeah, in an ideal world, it would have been great to have the collaboration, but under the circumstances, we had limited people making decisions. And again, our staff just respect the decisions that were being made, and we tried to keep in the loop as much as we could. So we did a little bit, but I agree that was more opportunities that we have to work on.
Thanks very much, Bill. We're going to have time for 2 more questions. So this one is for Craig. Craig, can you expand on how you plan to manage 700 staff, keeping them feeling safe at their job with 30,000 people visiting from all over Ontario?
Yeah, and I can, as much as I can in a couple of minutes. So, our health and safety specialist, Nikki Garsing, she's fantastic. So I think we'll be making sure that all our staff have the correct PPE in order to do their jobs. We've set up a plexiglass so that there isn't contact with the general public. We're also going to hopefully, the coordinator team is planning on having staff bubbles as well. We've also closed some of our indoor space that is generally available for public and opened it up for staff as well. So we're trying to, spread out our staff as much as we can, and making sure that we have policies and PPE in place that we can keep them as safe as possible. You know, we're also going to rely on, you know, suggestions from those frontline staff. They're the ones that are out there doing it every single day. So, you know, their opinions and the information they can provide to the leadership team is going to be very valuable getting through this winter. We have adjusted our capacity for the winter. You know, in the past, we'll have seen, you know, 4,000 to 5,000 people, you know, on a Saturday afternoon at Glen Eden. With the reservation system now, the most we'll see on site at any given time is about 1,400 people. So although we'll probably still see the 300,000, maybe even more this year, is going to be spread out over a greater time period. So there won't be the crowding and putting staff at risk. You know, we've implemented mask policy too, so we've kind of gone above and beyond what the directive is in our region. Masks are going to be required by everybody all the time when they visit Glen Eden, as soon as they get out of their car. And a lot of that is just simply because we've got a lot of tight spaces. We're going to have some lineups, as much as we're going to try not to, but we're going to have some tight spaces, lift lines, for example. So masks are going to be required everywhere on site, and we'll have a patrol team that'll be hopefully educating the public about those as well. So we're going to do the best that we can. Hopefully have policies and procedures in place to keep our staff safe, and that's ultimately the number one priority, is keeping our staff safe. So that's what we have in place right now. And again, we'll keep close contact with our staff, with our health units, and with other health and safety specialists as well, and doing as best we can.
Thanks, Greg. That's a tough question to answer, so thanks for fielding that one. So we're going to take time for one more question. It seems like I've seen this pop up quite a few times in the chat. Are reservation systems here to stay? Will this be a system that is kind of a mainstay of conservation areas post-pandemic? And this question is addressed to all. Pam, Gord, Pam, I think you were going to answer first.
Thanks, Tori. I do think some version of reservation systems will be here to stay. When I look across other organizations like South Carolina State Parks, or I don't know if any of you follow like the National Park System in the US, and some of them have been facing chronic overcrowding and overvisitation for years. And this is one of the solutions that they've come forward with to help manage their attributes, and they've had a decade of experience. So I look to other models sometimes when we're making some decisions. This was supposed to be our year for collecting information about use and how many people are coming in and what that patterning looked like. But COVID really misaligned that for us at the GRCA. So it's pushing us to reservations, but I think we were headed that way anyway. For some of the larger parks, or certainly the parks that are closer to the GTA and the big centers of population, I don't think we're going to have a choice but to use reservation systems to help manage visitation. Maybe not every day, but for quite a bit of it.
That's fair. Gord, you had something to add to that?
Well, just reservations. We just started our first ever day use reservation. We've always had the campsite reservations. We had our first day use reservation out at Spencer Gorge, and we haven't met post that activity that ended on November 15th, but we'll be meeting shortly, and we do see it as a continuation for that area for 2021. We've got to work out the details. We want that visitor experience and the safety on the roads, and safety for staff looked after. We'll look to expand that into perhaps some other areas of Hamilton Conservation Authority, in particular signature type events out at Westfield Heritage Village, where we've got very limited parking again, and more than the number of people that want to go in there. But outside of there, we'll have to just be careful, because the pandemic won't last forever, and we don't want to institute reservations all over the place, because maybe at the later part of 2021, the restrictions start to ease, and maybe people start going back to the mall and movie theaters and kids sports and pro sports and restaurants and the like. So, and maybe they even get back to their normal workspace. So we may not see all of the same levels of visitation we've seen in the past. So we're going to take a very thoughtful approach with reservations. We'll start with Spencer Gorge, Westfield, and maybe pump the brakes at that point.
Okay, thanks, Gord. I just did want to add a quick comment from Lake Simcoe conservation area. Just wanted to mention that being on the edge of the GTA, they are seeing a sizable appetite for reservations for new visitors, likely coming from all of the bigger CAs. So it looks like it's coming. Craig, would you like to add to this then?
Yeah, sure. I'll just say I think we'll have reservation system, probably, I'm not going to say forever, but almost. Our times, we may change from 2 to 4 to 6 to 8 hour visits. We may change our, the volume of people that can come into our park at any given time. But quite frankly, I wish I had it, knowing what I know now, I wish we had a reservation system 1, 2, 3, 4 years ago, because I think, with us closing down major roads like Guelph Line, Campbellville Road, Appleby Line, it was only a matter of time before the police was going to tell us to figure something out. So, the reservation system has been great for reducing some of the headaches for the frontline visitor services staff. The visitation is higher than what it has been in the past, but it's spread out now over 12 hours. As Bill said in one of his pictures there, everybody wants to come for a hike at the exact same time on the exact same day. It seems to be like, from 11 till 4, you've got a huge rush on the park. That doesn't happen anymore. They start coming in at 9 and they leave at, during summer hours at 9 o'clock at night. And it's that visitation now spread over. So it's been great. So we will have it in some form moving forward.
Thanks, Craig. Bill, do you want to finish this off?
Sure, I'll finish this off. Like Craig, I see where there's an opportunity for the reservation system to continue at some of our conservation areas. Whether it's at all is yet to be seen. But again, it's a great way to manage people, maximize revenue, and to give a really good visitor experience. And it also helps some of our other conservation areas get more people in. And a perfect example is with the reservation system at Badlands and Bellefontaine. They were full most of the time, so it drove people over to Terracotta, which has a greater land base for people to venture out and have that. Really, it's a good opportunity to give people that full nature experience. So again, like Craig, I see us using the reservation system on a regular basis and looking at where we'll use those going forward.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, everybody, for answering these questions. That will be the last question we take today. Please remember that any remaining questions will be answered in a follow-up email. So participants will receive that at the same time that they receive a short survey to talk about, just let us know how we did, what we can improve on. So this was recorded and this will be available for anybody who registered or not. Everybody can watch the webinar. I would like to take a second to acknowledge our committee membership for all their hard work in putting this together. My co-chair Dave Orr, John Messman from South Nation, Jan Willem LaRose from the Grand, Ryan Mackett from way up north at Lakehead region, Dan Andrews from Lake Simcoe, Brenna Bartley from Halton, Liam Fletcher from Hamilton, Brandon Good from Long Point, and Nikisha Mohammed from Conservation Ontario. I'd also like to thank the audience so much for giving us your time today. Please remember to join us for our second and third webinars in our fall series. We've got November 25th, that's next Wednesday, fundraising in parks, it's your job too. And December 2nd, we have a virtual site tour of Lakehead region, Essex, and North Bay, Mattawa. So you definitely don't want to miss that. And on behalf of the committee, thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll see you next week.